the What Bitcoin Did podcast.
Hi there from Austin. How are you all? Welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast, brought to you by Kraken, the best place to buy, sell, and trade digital currencies. I'm your host, Peter McCormack, and today I have an interview with Erik Voorhees, the CEO of Shapeshift. But before that, I've got a message from my show sponsors. So let's talk about BlockFi and their new announcement that they have launched crypto interest accounts. Have you checked them out yet? Have you been following the debate on Twitter? There's been plenty of discussion around this and different views. I've been tagged in some posts and people are discussing things about this, especially relating to topics such as rehypothecation. So I spoke to Zach about it this week, and being the cool CEO he is, he's opened up the floor to you. If you've got any questions regarding this, then fire them over to me. I'll collect them up. Me and Zach will get on a call and we will record and release the answers. I think that's a pretty fair thing to do. So feel free to email me. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com and I'll get them over to Zach. And also, I've got a new sponsor, but before I talk about them, I do want to just say a massive thanks to Cash App, who sponsored the podcast over the last month and helped me get over to Japan to do my interview with Mark Karpallis. Big thanks to them. Really appreciate it. But let's talk about my new sponsor, Flubit.com, an e-commerce website like Amazon, which allows you to buy items with crypto. They accept Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, and Mu, so I tried it out. I bought 5 copies of Andreas, The Internet of Money with Bitcoin. It was really cool. It was super easy, and I'm going to give those away at some point, so keep an eye on my Twitter. I think one of the coolest things about Flubit is on their homepage, they've got this checkbox with the search, which allows you to find items which are cheaper than Amazon. So if you use Amazon regularly, and you want to get items that are cheaper, and you want to use your crypto, then head over to flubit.com, which is flubit.com. So, on to my interview with Erik, and this is the second time I've recorded with him, and this time we did it over at the Shapeshift office in Denver. And I've wanted to catch up with Erik for a while, because last time we spoke, they had these impending KYC AML pressures on the business, and he couldn't talk about it too much at the time. And also, there's been a bunch of other things that have happened with Shapeshift over the years. So it's definitely time to catch up with Erik, and I appreciate him giving me the time. We talk about the KYC AML issues and the impact on the business. And we also talk about the Wall Street Journal hit piece and the investigation into that hit piece itself, both the original article and the investigation available in the show notes. And then we also talk about maximalism and why Erik believes in a multi-coin world and the pressures that come with that. So it's a great interview. I hope you enjoy it. And if you do want to support the show, head over to my website. It's whatbitcoindid.com. Click on the support section. It will tell you everything you can do. And if you've got any questions about the interview, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com. Anyway, thank you for having me here in Denver.
Yeah. Really glad to host you here. I've been a good fan of the show, like kind of ever since we did our first chat, which was a little over a year ago.
Is it about a year? Yeah, about a year. Yeah, I mean, well, thank you for supporting it. I think a lot's happened for you since the last show.
Yes, absolutely.
Got to try and get through it all. But actually, the one thing I wanted to start on with you, because the last time we connected was when I put out a tweet and I said, maximalism is common sense. And, you responded. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about it, I've been at the wrath of maximalists this week. And I kind of took myself as far as I could go with Bitcoin and maximalism. And then kind of when I got there, I don't know, I kind of felt restricted.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, not restricted in the sense that I don't have this huge and fundamental love and support of Bitcoin, but a couple of occasions I want to step out of the arena. So I wanted to, I know it's quite I don't know, some people would say it's a scam, but I was in Venice and had the opportunity of interviewing the guys from SpankChain, and I'm very interested in their approach to providing services for sex workers. And I wanted to go and find out about that industry.
Yeah.
And I got the wrath of the Bitcoiners because
it wasn't Bitcoin.
It's not Bitcoin, and it's Ethereum, and I'm a scammer, and I'm supporting scammers.
Yeah.
And
doesn't feel good, does it?
No, it doesn't. And there was another one also. I don't know if you've seen the everything about the Ryzen interview I'm doing, the Peter Ryzen interview.
No.
Yeah. So
I'm sure that will cause all the wrath of the world to come on you.
Yeah, because I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff on Lightning, and I wanted to get the most anti-Lightning person I could find who isn't, say, Roger Ver. And I understand and sympathize with a lot of what the Bitcoiners have against Peter Ryzen, and there's certainly a lot of flaws in things he's talked about before. But at the same time, I think by spending an hour or so with him, there might be things in there that I find that are interesting or questions I have. But
well, that's really important, because these debates should happen in in a discourse among people where long points can be made and there can be feedback and discussion rather than 280 character snipes against each other. That is those kind of discourses, I think, only further whatever the truth is. So I don't know why anyone would be opposed to that.
Yeah, I don't, but I guess I have a lot of sympathy for the position of people who take even using the term maximalist. Sometimes some maximalists don't like it, but I sympathize with what they've been through over the space of 10 years with lots of projects coming in and failures and scams. And I even just tweeted out before this show, before we recorded, just to say that I think despite everything and the attacks from the hardline Bitcoiners and them going after my sponsors and a whole bunch of other things, actually, I think they're still really important because I feel like they keep people in check. So whilst I don't enjoy it, I wouldn't want them to not exist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and a lot of the tragedy is that a lot of the maximalists are actually very, very smart and very important people who've had a huge amount of influence in the crypto industry in general. So the response is not to dismiss them, but is really, I think, to challenge this notion that only one blockchain should exist.
There was a time when you may have believed that yourself, though?
Absolutely, yeah. I was absolutely a maximalist. Yeah, and I used that term, I ascribed it to myself probably up until about late 2013. And it largely came from an understanding of monetary history and monetary theory and the idea that money is a means of exchange and a way to measure value, and you don't need a million ways to do that. And any altcoin or other chain to me seemed like a big distraction. And ultimately, the world would coalesce around one form of money because that's the most efficient. What changed my mind was realizing that, first and foremost, decentralization isn't a thing if there's only one blockchain. And that's really, I think, like a critical point. If you're in favor of decentralization, you should be at least interested in there being more than one blockchain, I would think. And two is that a lot of the blockchains are not trying to be the form of money for the world. They're not all trying to compete with Bitcoin as a form of money in that narrow scope. A lot of them are doing things entirely different. So with those two understandings, I think there's plenty of space for many other types of projects, many other coins and other blockchains. But still at the same time, most of those other projects are stupid. Many of them are scams. Most of them aren't worth paying attention to, but there's a big difference between saying most of the alternatives are not worth your time and saying that nothing other than Bitcoin should exist.
When you felt your kind of own shift, did you feel the wrath? Because obviously I wasn't around back then. When you first started expressing that?
No, and that's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that. No, when I first started Shapeshift, people were not...
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Somebody told me this week, I don't know if this is true or not, did you start Shapeshift anonymously to begin with?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started under a pseudonym, Bjorn.
Yeah.
Bjorn's a character from Lord of the Rings. It's a bear/man that shapeshifts between the two. The reason for doing that was sort of twofold. One, I was starting to get fairly well known in crypto, and I kind of wanted to just see if I could get a project off the ground without using my name and reputation. And two, this was right on the heels of all the SEC battles that I had been dealing with. And I was just not really interested in I was kind of burned about being out front and center as me and trying to push things that I thought were important forward and getting smacked around by the government for doing that. So I was in kind of a mental state of like wanting to be a little more timid there. Right. So for those two reasons, I started out as just Bjorn. Came to realize it's really hard to have a business call with people anonymously when you're well known in the industry because people start recognizing your voice and it just becomes totally impractical if you're ever going to have like human contact, anything other than text with other people that you're working with.
And what was the process of revealing it was you?
I don't really remember. I think it was like 6 or 9 months that it was under the pseudonym.
Right.
And then at some point I just like realized I'm fine being public about it. It had already started getting some traction, so I could tell that I could get it off the ground without using my name. And just more thinking and having the whole SEC battle a little more in the rearview mirror. I don't remember if we made a big announcement about it or anything, but it just became something that wasn't hidden anymore.
Do you remember the reactions?
I don't think there was much reaction at the time.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So maybe we didn't make a big fuss about it.
Okay. Sorry, anyway, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, so you were asking when I sort of made the switch from being a maximalist to not being a maximalist, did I draw ire back then? Because I certainly draw plenty of it now.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer, I think, is no. And I think it's because when Shapeshift got started, Ethereum didn't exist yet, and Bitcoin's dominance was really unquestionable. Like, clearly Bitcoin was the thing, and then out on the periphery were a few little experiments with a few little altcoins. And that was sort of the mode into which Shapeshift emerged. Everything changed after Ethereum launched, because after Ethereum launched, it was the first time, Ethereum has never been neck and neck competitor with Bitcoin, but it is a extremely credible project. It has become massive in its own right. And it was the rise of Ethereum that caused maximalists to really become highly antagonistic to anyone who was not also a maximalist. So it was post-Ethereum that people started getting angry at me, calling me a traitor to Bitcoin, and saying that what I was doing with Shapeshift was, add whatever word you want, scam or a deceptive trick or whatever.
Would you agree, though, in the point that it's still important to have these hardline Bitcoiners to keep things in check? Because the way I think about it is, and what I put in my tweet is, for example, there's been a few recent discussions around inflation. What's going to happen if the fee market doesn't incentivize miners? Does it risk the security of Bitcoin? And almost every hardline Bitcoiner I've seen has said, no, we can't have this.
Yeah,
It's a 21
I agree
million
with
cap.
that.
I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's healthy to have the debate, to have the discussion. I don't see any issue with the discussion, but
Sure.
it seems to come from more liberal areas. But it's almost like the hardline Bitcoiners keep people in check to ensure that any controversial topic really has to be debated in depth.
I think the difference here is that I agree that it's good that there are some really hardliners in Bitcoin, and I consider myself one of them in lots of ways. But if you're going to be a hardliner on something, you should be right. If you want to be a hardliner about the limit of Bitcoin being 21 million, that's a good position because you're right about that. If you're a hardliner that no other blockchain should exist other than Bitcoin, that's not valid because that's not a legitimate position to take. And having those debates about why a 21 million cap is good, but only one blockchain existing in the world is not, those are all conversations that can and should happen. So if you're going to be a hardliner on something, you better be damn sure that it's correct. That's the point.
But then what makes you right there? Because some people would say only one blockchain is right and you're wrong. And some people, I was with Peter Todd and he said, a small amount of inflation isn't a problem. So what makes you right? It's still subjective.
Yeah, but those debates are what should happen. And those debates should be among people who all realize that they're actually on the same team. They're all here like building a crypto industry. And if they want to have ferocious debates with each other on these specific points, then great, do it. But to cast out and to exile anyone from the conversation who doesn't believe a certain dogmatism about this maximalist, one chain monolith concept, that I think degrades debate, degrades the approach of truth, and is not good for Bitcoin or for the crypto industry more broadly.
Another thing that happened over the week is there was very aggressive attitudes towards me. Twice people copied in my sponsor Kraken and said, why are you sponsoring this joker? And were going after my income. And also...
that Kraken's a sponsor and they were questioning about why you have them as a sponsor.
Yeah, which is ironic seeing as Kraken, supports multiple coins, right? But at the same time, the point being that they went after the sponsor. Some people were questioning my integrity and also... Why? Because I have the Peter Risen interview. The point being is that I'm given often this term is used, given a platform to a fraud.
To a different point of view.
But a fraud and a liar and a proven discredited person. The point being is they went after my sponsors, they were aggressive towards me, and a lot of shaming. And at the time I was really angry. But actually then I started to consider and thinking, well, can you be a hardline maximalist without coming aggressive and threatening the income? Because actually that's what keeps me in check. It's not that somebody has a very firm point. It's the fact that there's a real threat to my integrity and my credibility, and that what makes me consider a lot of my work now. So like, I was happy to meet the Spank Chain team, but I really consider my sponsors carefully now. So I had one approach me recently that I turned down. I won't name them, because I looked at it and I thought, do you know what, it's not credible enough. In any other environment, most people, if you're a TV channel, you'll accept any sponsor if they're legal and they're paying money. But whilst this was legal, I did think it would affect my credibility. And I think what I'm getting at is, do you think you can be a maximalist without being aggressive and threatening?
Yeah, I'm sure there are some maximalists that hold the maximalist view, but are also civilized in their discourse with others. Like, those people are definitely out there. The problem is that they're not the ones shouting around on Twitter. And so the impression you get of a lot of the maximalists is one of sort of, witch hunting after everyone, being very close-minded to anything. And those people get all the airtime because they're the ones making the big fuss about it. But that's why it's really important to be able to have these conversations, especially on a podcast where people can actually have a debate. I'm always skeptical when people say someone shouldn't be allowed to talk, because if someone is a fool or a liar or a con, giving them an opportunity to talk is also an opportunity for refutation of those points. Saying that someone should never be allowed to talk, I think, is a very lazy way of shutting down discourse. And even if sometimes you shut down the discourse of people who shouldn't be talking, you do more damage than good by having that kind of behavior.
Okay. You've had it quite a bit as well. It can be quite stressful, right?
You mean the ire and wrath of the maximalists?
I mean, of anyone at some points, right? When you're the center of attention and there's questions around your credibility or integrity, it is... I found it stressful. I don't know how about... I mean, you've had it on far higher levels than I have.
It is stressful. And it's the kind of thing that, like, on the internet, there's a lot of things you can't prove or disprove. And so when people start attacking you, there are issues around which can't be disproven. And so you're faced with an impossible choice. You can try to argue online with people about a topic that cannot be proven. And if you start arguing, other people will just be like, oh, well, now there's this controversy, and then you'll get more attention on the controversy, which isn't necessarily a good strategy. Or you can just kind of let it be quiet, and then other people will watch that and be like, oh, well, he didn't refute that, so it must be true. So you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But I think anyone who gets to any level of recognition deals with this question. When Bitcoin was small and there were a few thousand people and it was just Bitcoin, it was very easy for everyone in the community to agree with each other. As it has grown, which is a huge sign of its success, and as it has become more dynamic and diverse, it has fragmented, and people in these different fragments are not all supportive of each other. And some of that's fine, and some of it I think is really toxic.
Well, I'm conscious of time. There's a whole bunch of other things I want to talk to you about. So last time we met, there was I think you had an impending KYC issue.
Yeah.
But we couldn't talk about it at the time.
Yeah.
And obviously you took a lot of criticism at the time. And one of them, I saw a bunch of people saying, you've gone against your original kind of visions. Erik, you should close down the business and stick your finger up to the government.
Sold out, gave up on my principles, yeah.
But actually, so I spoke to a lawyer, and he said you actually have a fiduciary duty to keep the business going. You can't just close a business because you have a fiduciary duty. Is it to your employees and your investors?
That's probably true. I mean, yeah, I certainly have a fiduciary duty. Whether or not I could close it down sort of unilaterally, that's an interesting question. But I certainly did a lot of soul searching during that period and came to realize that closing the business down would have been a fun ego trip, and I would have won some points among armchair observers who aren't building things. But that to actually make a lasting influence and to actually have a lasting effect, just shutting things down it did not cause long-term value to be built in the industry. I can fight against the things that I care about best when I have a platform on which to do it. Shutting everything down does not accomplish that goal. So I'm trying to play a very long game, and sometimes you have to lose a battle in order to keep playing.
How much can you now talk about the pressures that came from, which regulators, which government offices came to you and started putting the pressure on you. How much can you tell me about that now?
Not much. I hope that I can discuss more in the future. I can't talk about much of it now. I'll say that we basically spent literally millions of dollars and a very long time, many months, navigating every nuance of sort of international KYC regulation. And the conclusion we came to was that there is still a lot of gray area in certain ways, but that the existential risk to the company, to me personally, to others involved in the company, was too high to continue on that path. In other words, there were always arguments that could still be used. The likelihood of those succeeding seemed to be too low, given the stake, given the stake of the company, the number of people who were here, the goals that we wanted to accomplish in the future. There was too much being wagered on a battle that we were not certain we could win. So we relented on that point.
I'm going to quote from the blog article about it. It's a very interesting read, actually. It reads very much like an Erik Voorhees quote, but privacy is a foundational element of a civil and just society and should be defended by all good people. Can privacy and KYC AML rules coexist?
No. I mean, this is why it was such a devastating thing for us to do, because I personally, and us as a company, respect the right of individuals to have financial privacy. Forcing KYC on people violates that right. So I don't support that. The fact that we are doing it isn't because we support that. It's because we are essentially being forced to do that. And that's, I think, what a lot of people are not understanding. They're thinking that because we changed the policy, we changed our principles. We didn't. It is wrong, and I believe it is morally wrong to require people to surrender their personal information. And I believed that a year ago, 5 years ago, and I believe it today.
Andreas responded to you, and he said, Lightning Network, atomic swaps, and decentralized exchanges are the only way to resist surveillance economics. Is that a path you've considered going down?
Well, when you say you, do you mean me personally or Shapeshift?
Shapeshift.
Any path that a company goes down is not decentralized by definition.
Right.
So, and even several of the decentralized exchanges have been imposing KYC as well. It is not as clean cut that a decentralized exchange can avoid these issues and a centralized exchange cannot. There's a lot of nuance to it, and it depends a lot on the structure of the entity, on the risk tolerance of the individuals involved, on the jurisdictions that are being considered. So it's not an easy question.
Okay.
But I mean, Andreas is someone I obviously respect vastly. I consider him a friend. He is certainly right that a degree of decentralization can avoid some of these things some of the time. And that's one of the reasons that decentralized finance is so exciting as a broad concept.
Next up, I talked to Erik about the Wall Street Journal hit piece and the future for Shapeshift. But before that, I've got a message from my show sponsors. So let's talk about my new sponsor, Kraken, again. Have you checked them out yet? As I mentioned previously, I signed up back to Kraken as they became a sponsor because if I'm going to promote them, I want to be using them. And I hadn't used Kraken in a while. I'm not really sure why, but when I wanted to have a sponsor for the show, that was an exchange. Kraken was the one I went to. They didn't come to me. I went to them and said, look, I love everything you stand for. Do you want to become a sponsor? And they said yes. So I'm back using them. And what I do at the end of each month when I'm balancing my accounts and closing out my accounts for the podcast, I have people I have to pay in Bitcoin and people pay me in Bitcoin. So I just balance my accounts on an exchange. I previously used Coinbase, but I've moved to Kraken. So at the end of this month, I'm going to be going through the process and I'll report back to you on my experience. So I'll definitely let you know how that goes. But why do I love Kraken? I really think these days, for me, it's important that I have an exchange I trust, and I trust Kraken implicitly. The size of the business allows them to invest properly in security and operational procedures, and that's really important with everything that's happened with exchange hacks. I also love the way they're doubling down on their investments. You just have to check out the blog, see everything they're doing. They are preparing for the growth of Bitcoin and crypto. And also, Jesse's just a proper Bitcoiner. He's always supported Bitcoin. So yes, I love Kraken. If you want to check them out, head over to kraken.com, which is kraken.com. And also with BlockFi, as I mentioned in the intro, They've launched these new crypto interest accounts. There's been a lot of interest, a lot of excitement, but also there's been some challenges. And I spoke to Zach about this, and he has opened up the floor to you. If you've got any questions about this, feel free to get in touch. Email them over to me at hello@whatbitcoindid.com. I'm going to get Zach on a call. We're going to record the questions. We're going to record the answers, and I'll stick them up on SoundCloud for you to listen to. I think that's pretty fair. I think that's pretty cool of Zach. I think that's pretty transparent. It's the way I like to run my business, so I like what he's doing there. So yeah, feel free to email me on hello@whatbitcoindid.com with any questions you got for Zach. And lastly, I've got Blinkist advertising again, which is pretty cool. Do you know them? Have you got the app? I was using Blinkist before they approached me, actually. I think it's a pretty cool app. With all the great business books out there that you want to read or that people suggest to you, but you don't have time to get through them, with the Blinkist app, they solve this by condensing down the best key takeaways and need-to-know information from thousands of non-fiction books into a 15-minute read. I've used Blinkist when researching my work as I'm able to find the most useful bits from a book quickly and efficiently. And they've also got crypto books, which is cool. They've got Nathaniel Popper's Digital Gold and The Age of Cryptocurrency by Paul Vigner and Michael Casey. And guess what? They've got a special offer for the listeners of the podcast. If you want to check out Blinkist, you can get a 7-day free trial by heading over to blinkist.com/WBD. That is blinkist.com/WBD to start your free 7-day trial. I only have one criticism from the time, personally, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying.
Go for it.
I found the announcement, that was the only thing, the way it was announced, I felt like you hid it behind member benefits.
Yeah.
When I really wanted you to come out and say, as much as you could say, but we have to do this. We do not have a choice in doing this. This is how we're going to implement KYC and why. And it came out as announcing Shapeshift membership.
Yeah.
That was my only criticism of it, because I was like, it just felt like it was hiding it. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. It's a fair criticism. Basically, we had been working on and building a sort of, voluntary membership account-based system for a while. One that someone could use if they wanted to, but one that isn't imposed on them if they didn't. And we'd gotten very excited about that and continue to work on that behind the scenes. Overlay that with our realization throughout early and mid 2018 that we would have to impose KYC. And the two things obviously then became related. And so we debated, do we announce one and then the other? Do we do it together? What's the right way to do that? There were pros and cons to all the ways of doing it. And I don't know if there was a right way to do it. But ultimately, I think the message did get mixed up. I just don't know if there was a way to do the message without it being mixed up.
What's the impact been on business? Because you've obviously had the struggles with the bear market. You announced some layoffs, which, by the way, I really enjoyed the article. I've had to lay off people at my previous company. It's truly terrible.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone can understand what it's like to stand in front of a room of people. And I don't know what your process was, but
it was that.
Let them know a third of you are going to go through a process. People are upset. People are angry. It is truly terrible. And you probably lost a lot of sleep, as I did. But how much of that was the result of lost business due to having to move to KYC, and how much of it was down to bear market conditions?
It was a lot of both. So obviously 2018 was a brutal year just by any crypto metric. And that's okay. I mean, it came on the heels of an incredible year in 2017, and it was expected. I expected things to decline by 80 or 90% just from the psychological bubble effect. So that was certainly a piece of it. But the KYC was a huge piece of it as well, and not necessarily for the reason people think. So when we had accounts required in KYC, it wasn't just that people that arrived to the site as individual customers had to decide, am I okay with creating an account or not? Most of our volume came through partners, wallet partners, mobile wallets and other different types of software wallets where they had lots of their users, and those users were able to do crypto conversions through our API. That was the majority of our business. Those wallet partners didn't want to then require their users to go through KYC. So if you take, 100,000 customers of wallet A, instead of asking how many of those customers are willing to go through the KYC process and continue using Shapeshift, if the wallet decided, no, it was 100% loss of that group. So we lost, I mean, basically the entire customer base dropped very close to zero very quickly. And we expected that. We thought it would be this huge implosion just because it's changed and something that was ungated became gated. A bunch of partners, the business model has changed, and so they switched to something else. But yeah, it was brutal. I mean, we lost the vast majority of all our volume, and so we now have, and we did that. We went into it knowing that would likely happen, and so we had to make a decision of adding KYC to continue playing a long game in which everyone's going to hate that decision internally and externally and lose all of our business in the short term in order to continue playing over the long term. That was pretty brutal. Mm-hmm. And so we continue to try to rebuild and recover from that.
I just want to bring up a quote, sorry, I was looking for on my phone. I've brought this up in a few interviews recently. That's from obviously the late Tim May. He said, "I can't speak for what Satoshi intended, but don't think it involved Bitcoin exchanges that have draconian rules about KYC, AML, passports, freezes on accounts, and laws about reporting suspicious activity to the local secret police. There is a real possibility that all the noise about governance, regulation, and blockchain will effectively create a surveillance state, a dossier society."
Yeah, fair criticism. The way that I've always understood this, and let's use Coinbase as a good example here. There's a lot of people in Bitcoin that absolutely hate Coinbase. And they hate them sometimes for justified reasons and sometimes for unjustified reasons. But Coinbase is essentially like a crypto bank. It looks very much like a PayPal, and it's had all the KYC and all that kind of stuff, lots of surveillance over its users since the beginning. And it's very understandable why people would be critical of that. At the same time, because there are companies like that with that model, it has allowed, let's call it the status quo financial industry, the status quo government industry, to accept the rise of crypto. If it was true that no company in crypto had ever added KYC or ever did anything that regulators wanted, the backlash against this movement would have been far more drastic and far more severe. So there's a bit of a camel's nose under the tent phenomenon going on that I think a lot of people in crypto don't appreciate, which is that a lot of those who are very early in this have seen that to make this work, it has to be like the frog in the water. You move slowly, and I understand if someone disagrees with that strategy or doesn't fully comprehend that, but I think it's important. I think the bridge between the status quo that the normal world is used to and the crazy radical crypto world that we're all in favor of and move toward, there has to be a transition phase and transition companies and a buffer zone between those two things so that new alien species can actually survive in the host.
Conscious of time. There's two other things I want to talk to you about. The Wall Street Journal article.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously pissed you off a lot.
Yes, it did.
Total hit piece.
Yeah.
Which...
all three of them now.
Well, I'm not a fan. So I went through the Wall Street Journal's Bitcoin archive, and it's pretty much always hit pieces, clickbait headlines. Can you talk to me about what happened? Because you were essentially misled.
Yeah. So basically, we had a journalist referred to us by Paul Vigna at the Wall Street Journal, who's done a lot of Bitcoin articles, and his own articles have gotten worse and worse. But I had trusted him, and early last year, he put us in touch with one or two of the journalists that ended up writing that hit piece about us. We trusted them implicitly because they came on referral of Paul Vigna, and they told us they were doing a story about crypto companies generally, and they wanted to learn more about it. They were going to travel out here to Denver, and they wanted to talk to me about the industry. This happens all the time. Nothing about that seemed strange to me. I sat down with the guy for about an hour and a half or 2 hours, and he asked all sorts of questions and then didn't end up using anything that I conveyed to him. And instead, he used it as an opportunity to try to find where our office was, learn about the KYC that we hadn't done prior, and basically get me to say a whole bunch of things so that he could nitpick or cherry pick the few items he wanted for his article and take things out of context. brutally disingenuous. And not only was his methodology disingenuous just on a how you should act with other people level, their whole methodology and data set was complete crap. And people that read the Wall Street Journal believe that paper because they have a certain reputation. So when they make a bunch of claims, the default of their readership is to believe those claims. However, blockchains are transparent and immutable, and actually you can do a lot of investigation on others' investigation. So we have, and I believe today there will be an article coming out from a blockchain forensic company completely discrediting their story. We tried to do it as well, but obviously people wouldn't necessarily trust us because we're the subject of the piece. But these are blockchains we're talking about, and so all the allegations in that document are being unraveled. And today, I think it was the 21st. So there will be an article coming out about that today, I think, that people might see by the time this goes live.
I got the feeling they'd written their article before they started it.
They definitely had their intention before they started it, yeah. I mean, the way they described everything was comical. They made sure to announce that we were in an 80s era office building surrounded by marijuana dispensaries, as if that has anything to do with like running a crypto business or the reputation. I mean, everything in Denver is an 80s era office building surrounded by dispensaries. They were so clearly out to discredit me, to discredit Shapeshift, and to basically use Shapeshift to cast a negative light over the crypto industry broadly. It was really slimy, and I've been burned a few times by journalists that kind of put on a fake front. This was the worst one, and the amount of cleanup and damage control we had to do after that was pretty epic. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars lost in us trying to deal with lawyers and business relationships and PR firms, like trying to figure out how to respond correctly to this hit piece. It's been rough, but I wouldn't expect anything else from the Wall Street Journal at this point. I mean, their readership is a banking industry who themselves are not fans of crypto and who love to read any story that disparages the crypto industry or people within it.
I've always hoped more from Paul Vigner as a published author in the sector, not expecting him to be a vocal voice for Bitcoin, but as a journalist to be fair.
To be fair, yeah.
But it appears to me, because I've been through all his previous articles, I will have to confirm this when I put the interview out, but I'm pretty sure when I looked at it, he repeatedly writes articles attacking Bitcoin. But I found 3 neutral stories about Ripple, which I found very interesting. But he has an opportunity to be a fair voice for crypto and Bitcoin and appears to only attack.
Yeah, that's certainly interesting. I mean, I would certainly have expected more from him as well. And it was really disappointing. I mean, the 2 junior authors that wrote the original hit piece, they're probably trying to make a name for themselves, so they don't really care if they put out garbage because they get a bunch of clicks for it. But Paul Vigna should have really known better, and frankly, he should have apologized for introducing those people to us, and he should be conveying to the Wall Street Journal that they should not be putting out crap like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have a real lack of high quality journalists within the space. I mean, I've even struggled with some of Nathaniel Popper's positions recently. I think I would probably say Laura Shin is probably our best and most fair crypto journalist right now, but I think we have a real lack.
Yeah, it's kind of a struggle. I mean, part of the issue is like anyone who really starts to learn about crypto falls down the rabbit hole and gets hooked, and then ends up leaving their publications that they're in, the reputable publications, and starting their own thing or joining a crypto publication. And so then outsiders have a hard time believing those people because they no longer work at Forbes or at the Wall Street Journal. So it's a funny phenomenon that crypto is pulling so many people in that it's causing this kind of effect to happen.
Okay, so moving on from this, I think it would be great to find out how's Shapeshift doing now? What is the vision? It seems like you've so you talked about in your article when you had to lay off staff that you lost focus. You've obviously closed down Prism now. What is the focus now? What is the direction? What is the mission for Shapeshift?
Yeah, great question. Everything we're doing right now is related to the launch of our new platform, which is in private beta. Anyone that wants to check it out can go to beta.shapeshift.com. What we're trying to build is essentially a complete crypto platform that is non-custodial. that can be in some ways an alternative to all the things that Coinbase does well, but done in a non-custodial way. So I don't want to talk about too many more details before we formally, launch and announce it. But it is significantly different than what Shapeshift is today. It still allows what Shapeshift is today in it, but it's been the focus of the company for the last 6 months, and everything that we've been building over the last few years is really pulled together to power this new platform.
So, is it a decentralized exchange?
It is not it's not decentralized,
right?
Because we are still a centralized company.
Okay, yeah.
But it's non-custodial in that we do not hold customer funds, and that's the key element.
So, looking on your website beforehand, the 3 products: Shapeshift, CoinCap, and KeepKey. It seems to me that it's the focus here is asset analysis, asset custody, but it's all focused on the asset.
Yeah. We want to be the place where anyone can acquire, trade, send, receive crypto in an easy way that normal people can understand and use without being custodial. And no one has ever done that before. So that's what we're working on right now.
And how's it going with KeepKey?
KeepKey is part of that. So basically all the technologies that we have acquired or built are used in this new platform to build something that couldn't have been built without these pieces. So apologies if that's a little cryptic.
Yeah.
People will understand it better when they see how it works.
What's the date of release-ish? I know it's always 2 weeks.
So it's in private beta.
Yeah.
I think it will come out, probably toward the end of the first half of this year.
Right, okay. And how are your feelings on the market? You will have experienced bull and bear markets in crypto because you've been here pretty much from the start, right?
Yeah. So this is my 4th bear market, fourth. I've lived through 4 crypto bubbles at this point.
How does it compare and contrast to previous ones?
Each one gets bigger and more intense.
Right. Because the numbers are bigger, even though the percentages might be smaller.
Yeah, the numbers are bigger. The effect is bigger. Like the first bubble I was in early mid 2011 was bigger in terms of percentage gain, but the industry was small back then. People talked in terms of hundreds of thousands of dollars, not multi-billion dollars. Like this is a big industry at this point. And so when this whole industry rises by 100x in 2017 and then collapses back down by 90x or 90%, it has a big effect. I mean, you see it in the media, you see it in how people talk about it. And so each of these bubbles and waves gets bigger and more intense and just crazier. And it's a wild ride to be on for sure. But I think this is the bubble that having gone through this bubble, it is the one that I'm least worried will be recovered from. Just because the industry has made so much progress. The technology is getting really good. There are professional companies in the industry doing good work. There are so many talented engineers flooding into blockchain and crypto generally. And the amount of innovation that's happening, I can't keep up with, even though I live in this every day. So that's been awesome to see. And I don't know if markets will get crazy again in a month or in 2 years, but they will get crazy again. And so we sit here and we build and we get ready for that.
So it feels like you're kind of a combination of confident and excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to understand the perspective I come from. Like back in 2011, we imagined someday, maybe in our fantasies, that that this industry would be what it is today. That every major bank in the world would be talking about it. That it would be agitating governments all over the place. That Bitcoin would be worth even $100, and that millions of dollars would be moving around the world across borders with this technology. These were like the dreams that we had, and so they are now real. And the likelihood that Bitcoin would be successful back then was so tiny compared to what it is today, where we are not mainstream yet, but we are getting there. And most people in the world, most people at least in the Western world in modern society, are familiar with Bitcoin. They've heard of it. It's not this strange alien thing anymore. It's making huge progress, and I am confident and excited in it because it is so much more likely to take over the world today than it was back when I got started.
And how important is Bitcoin to you now compared to other digital assets?
I mean, so personally, I probably have 90% of my crypto net worth in Bitcoin. So I always am I always laugh a little bit when people think that I've built Shapeshift and I shill shitcoins because I profit from the shitcoins. Like, I profit when Bitcoin goes up vastly more than anything that could happen on any altcoin. Just the degree to which I am exposed to Bitcoin is so much stronger. Bitcoin remains my favorite coin. I think it remains by far the center of the industry. It is the most conservative and safest cryptocurrency out there, and I think it has a huge and massive future in it. At the same time, I think there are a lot of other amazing projects, and I think they make Bitcoin better. I think Bitcoin is strengthened by its interaction with these other blockchains, not harmed. And I am so confident in Bitcoin. I think that is what helps allow me to be interested in other cryptos as well, because I don't have this insecurity that they will replace Bitcoin. And even if they do, that's fine. That the spirit of what Bitcoin is about lives on in any crypto that dominates. And I think there will be a lot of very successful projects, not just one.
All right, my final question, Erik. What do you think are the most important things that need to happen for both the industry on any level, but Bitcoin on a technical level?
What do I think should happen for Bitcoin on a technical level?
So, for example, is fungibility important to you? Is Lightning important to you? Are both important to you? But also for the industry, are ETFs important to you?
All of those are important in my opinion. Okay. And that's why I like to see all the experimentation that's happening. Bitcoin needs to be very conservative, and it can't try out every new idea, and it can't optimize for every variable. It can't be, in other words, the most innovative and the most conservative at the same time. Those things operate at, they're mutually exclusive. So I wouldn't try to cram every feature or every desirable attribute onto Bitcoin. The fact that other chains are able to explore some of these things is great. I don't think that other chains should be dismissed just because they are less decentralized than Bitcoin. I think there should be chains that are more centralized and with higher throughput, and there should be chains that are less centralized with less throughput. And having both of those in existence actually makes the whole crypto ecosystem stronger. And in both cases, we're still vastly better off than any bank.
Great. Okay, how do people keep an eye on what's happening with Shapeshift?
I would recommend everyone go to beta.shapeshift.com. Sign up there for the new product when it comes out, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you see it.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me here. Great to see you again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, so what did you make of that? Did you enjoy that interview with Erik? What did you think about everything he has to say? Listen, I know Erik's got his critics, and I certainly don't agree with everything he's done or all the decisions he's made, but I mean, I don't run a huge exchange, so what do I know? But he often faces challenges that he is a shitcoiner, but I also feel it's really difficult these days to have kind of a pure Bitcoin business. It's something I've wrestled with, and it's something I discussed with Pierre Rochard in an interview I did with him a while back, and it's definitely worth checking out because we discussed the idea that altcoins that have a net positive influence on Bitcoin. I don't mean the scams, let's just ignore the scams for now, but let's go with those projects with the honest intentions of building something that people want to use. Do they take people away from Bitcoin, or do they bring people into the market? And do they even support Bitcoin in other ways? For example, I know that there are core developers who can fund their work by consulting on altcoin and blockchain projects. How do we feel about that? Definitely something I've wrestled with, and definitely something I'm open to discussing, so feel free to reach out to me if you've got any strong opinions about it. I also think it's very difficult to build these Bitcoin-only businesses. Like, if you've got an exchange, it's difficult to not consider listing altcoins, and if you've got a hardware wallet, it's difficult not allowing people to store those altcoins. And we have a free market, right? So if we have a free market and they're not scams, what do? I don't sit in the camp where I believe everything out of Bitcoin is a scam. I only own Bitcoin and Monero, but I do believe there are other interesting projects out there. We also discussed other important issues. We discussed the issue with the Wall Street Journal and the hit piece, which is available in the show notes, as well as the investigation into that. What did you make of that? What do you make of the KYC pressures? You know, people were telling Erik, you should close down your business, you should put your middle finger up to the man, but I don't believe that's practical. I don't believe that's realistic, and KYC is an option. If you don't want to use KYC, don't use Shapeshift, but there are regulatory pressures, and sometimes it's not worth putting yourself in prison just to prove a point. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the interview. You know, if you've got any questions about it, you can reach out to me. And I do want to say a big thanks to everyone who supports the show. And also, just on this trip I've been on, you know, all the way around the world and all the people I've met, I just want to say a huge thanks to everyone who comes up to me and tells me they enjoy the show. All the hospitality I've received in every city I've been to. People just want to have a coffee or a beer. Look, it means a lot. Thank you so much. I am looking forward to getting home though. I am missing my kids. But listen, look, if you want to support the show, these are the things you can do. Firstly, you just listen to the sponsors. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to travel around the world, meet these people and do these really great interviews. So just give them a listen. And if you don't want to listen to the ads, well, become a patron. I've got 89 now, closing down on 100. That's patreon.com/whatbitcoindid. And if you don't want to use Patreon, you can use crypto. Just drop me an email or a DM. I'll give you the address to send to and add you to the distribution list. I'm also accepting Lightning. You can now buy merchandise. I don't make any money. Well, I do make money off it, but all the money I make from this is going to go towards buying Lightning nodes for people. So if you want to buy some merchandise, head over to my website. There's a merchandise button at the top. You can get caps and hoodies and t-shirts. And yeah, if you do buy one, please upload it to Twitter. Tag me. Let me see you wearing it. You can become a show sponsor. I thought we were going to have a dip this month. With the Mt. Gox series taking me over 150,000 downloads last month, I thought it was going to dip. It looks like I might get close to 200,000 this month, which is pretty amazing. And today I'm going to go over 1 million all-time downloads, which is pretty cool. You can leave me a review on iTunes, or you can click on the subscribe button. You can follow me on social media. I'm at What Bitcoin Did on everything, on Medium, on Instagram, on Twitter. My personal Twitter is at Peter McCormack. DMs are open. Feel free to reach out to me. You can check out my website, whatbitcoindid.com, and subscribe to my newsletter, and you can share the show out with your friends and family. All right, I've got one night left in Austin, then I'm heading back to New York for a couple more interviews, and then I'm heading back to the UK. It's been an amazing trip, but I can't wait to get home to see my kids because this has been far too long without seeing them. So thank you to everyone on this trip, and remember, if you want to reach out to me, my email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com.